How's it going, Kittanning? Welcome to the Greatest City in the World podcast. It has been a long time since we've had Miss Joanne Arroyo with us, and so very excited to have you, one of my favorite people in the entire world. So,
Likewise.
I talk to Joanne quite often. She is a counselor. She's putting together all kinds of amazing things that, to be revealed in future days, right?
Yes.
But it's interesting to me because we have a lot of these conversations, and I am always built up by it. And we tried a couple years ago. We did mental health.
Has it been a couple years?
It has been a couple of years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Talk about pandemic effects.
Yeah,
so we'll
right?
be going into that, but wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we tried this thing called Mental Health Mondays, and it was super fun, and had a lot of great reviews about it, and people were asking questions and all that kind of stuff. And I say, a lot of times when we do things, I say, they work so well, we quit doing them. And that's just a lot of times how we are as human beings.
Right.
It's like good things that are working, we kind of just like put off to the side because there's other problems in the world to solve, right?
There's always so many others.
Yeah. So we're going to get back to this today, and hopefully not just today, but over the next several weeks, we're going to try out again Mental Health Mondays and see how it goes. And so I thought it would be fitting today to just start with my own mental health. And so the episode today is called What the Heck is Wrong with Andy? And so
And we don't have enough time.
there's not enough time in the rest of the day to figure that one out. But in all seriousness, this last couple of years has been a real weird time. And I don't think that anyone has fully kind of figured out how to process what has happened in the world over the last couple of years. You and I have the great benefit of being able to process this, not just through the lens of the physical world and through proper mental health practices. We also get to process this through a spiritual lens, which I think allows us to then kind of look beyond COVID and any possible future that there could be. And so I think that's a huge help. And so hopefully we'll be able to bring some insights, not just to what we're doing now, but what the future can be.
Right. Yeah.
That makes sense?
Sure.
Okay. So to give you kind of the background of my last couple of years, you guys have noticed I haven't been posting many videos lately. That's partially by design and partially by necessity because I just like burn out. I just like wasn't able to continue. And so, but I was also thinking I need to shift directions and that kind of stuff anyway. So it worked out. It was a good time for a burnout if there ever was one.
Bring in other.
Yeah. So but then as I've taken time off, I've been thinking a lot about the last couple of years, and I've been one since the very beginning where, I was on board for the 2 weeks to flatten the curve and all that kind of stuff. But I became very tired of the pandemic very quickly, and I wasn't ever really worried about coronavirus. Like it wasn't at the front of my thinking. But the more that I've sat down and I've had time to really think about how this has affected me, it's weighing on me heavily. And I'm someone who didn't really take it all that seriously compared to many others. And so if it's affecting me that much, I'm thinking like, man, how much has it affected not just the rest of our city, but the rest of the world?
Right.
And we see all the crazy things happening in society, all of the things that we're like, I don't know, when I watch the news, it's like none of it makes sense. I'm like, how are people possibly thinking like this? How are they making decisions that are these? Like, this just doesn't make any sense. What's happening right now? And I think it ties back to that, where it's like, this is weighing on heavily on us a lot more than we think that it is.
Right. Well,
can you speak to that a little bit?
well, the decision making that doesn't seem to make sense is because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because we're in a highly reactive state. Everybody has been impacted, and you were speaking earlier about being able to look beyond. Because we have the benefit of spirituality, we have an imagery and something that's been promised to us for us to see and to focus on.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that we're not in where we are standing here and now.
Yeah.
And that here and now component is something that changes so quickly because it is a highly reactive state.
Yeah.
We don't have a chance to catch up with ourselves. We don't have a chance to really understand, process, and know how we're doing.
Yeah. And we talked about this a little bit beforehand, like not only just what all was wrong with me, but then it's so easy to take that conversation and turn it into like a very political thing, and I don't think that's where we want to go today. But at the same time, it's like, okay, as this thing is weighing on me, and if I'm incredibly blessed, okay? So I have this benefit of an eternal mindset.
Yes.
I have the benefit of, I have plenty of money, plenty of resources to be able to, survive any kind of financial shock.
Got skills.
There's a lot of people out there that aren't that way.
Correct.
And so, I guess let's just talk about me first. I'll just be selfish to begin us off. What would you suggest to someone like me, where I'm saying, I'm in this place, I realize this is weighing on me, there doesn't seem to be any discernible end to this. How do I walk through this without it weighing so heavily, even in the back of my mind, where I didn't even realize it was happening until I stopped to slow down long enough to realize it was happening.
Right. Key phrase.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. See, I'm answering my own questions.
Right? Now. See, you're getting really good at this.
Right.
And by the way, that's the point. That's the point. Whenever we disseminate information, and in my work specifically, it's so that people can then walk out the door, keep going, and use everything that they've learned in a way that never gets worn, because it can always be something that can be applied to a new situation.
It's fresh every single time we talk about it.
Yeah.
So take us back to then square one.
Square one.
Yeah.
Definitive phrase, right?
Yeah.
Is taking a moment to think about it, right? But where that falls short, because often we've heard pause, take a little time to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
We had all kinds of recommendations during the initial shutdown about what we needed to be doing so that we could get through, if you would.
Yeah.
But stopping cognitively is incomplete. And it's incomplete because we have to be able to feel and experience what we're going through in order to release it from the back of our minds, hanging out, weighing us down, in a way that we then understand how we want to be responding. Remember earlier I talked about being in a state of reactivity, right? Being in a state of reactivity is an equal and opposite reaction, my physics people, all right? And that's what we've been.
Yeah.
So response is something that requires us to be in a body that has taken pause, that's in a resting state, that allows our thinking brain to come online to really be able to filter through and recognize the different incoming that has been so prevalent in a way that we can pick and choose what it is that's relevant and important to us in how we are indeed going to get through. But we have to be able to feel that fear, right? Because the reactivity hasn't been reactivity to science findings. It's been reactivity to fear.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I got to write these things down, otherwise I'll forget.
No, you're getting good at this, remember?
Yeah. So there might be a lot of people out there that think, yeah, this isn't really affecting me. And we have this great benefit also of living in Armstrong County, where most of if you didn't watch the news, you might not even know anything was really happening.
Right.
Unless you went to the hospital or something like that. Right. We're a very rebellious place, just naturally, which, thank you guys. Right. I appreciate your rebellion. But anyway, so maybe people are thinking, well, this hasn't really affected me either. Like if they're in the same place that I was 2 months ago. As I sat down and thought about it, I was thinking about all the different times that I'm thinking about guidelines, about COVID policy, all these things, when I don't even really think I'm thinking about it. So like every time somebody walks into my office, I'm thinking, okay, well, does this person want to come into my office, or should I deal with them in the lobby? If they come in with a mask on, do they want me to wear a mask as well? If someone, and multiple people have asked me after they knew I had COVID, were you vaccinated or were you not vaccinated? And they don't mean anything. They're not judging me at all. But at the same time, I'm always thinking like, how will I answer that question? How will I, what's the best way to phrase that? Because I wasn't, and I'm not. And so all those different things kind of come out, and I didn't realize, the more I thought about it, I was like, there's a million little interactions in my day that weren't there
Right.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
And how much mental space does that take up? And so then how much more proactive do I need to be about being cognizant of my emotions and my mental state and my body and all those things. So
Right.
that makes sense?
Yeah, well, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
But like we were talking earlier, we stop doing the things that are working because there's so many things that are not working,
Yeah.
right? So that's already the state that we were in before all of this came down the pike.
Right.
And we ended up having to be in a much more reactive state. So now throw in that mental space on top of that, and what's wrong with Andy?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, and that makes total sense, right? Because we're in a time of history in 2019 where you have more prescription antidepressants and anxiety medication than ever in history before.
Right.
And then you throw on top of that maybe the most anxiety-inducing media event of all time, plus an actual virus that can kill people.
Right. It's not like it's contrived.
Right. And so you have all of these things coming together in this like perfect storm of like mental health disaster.
Right. So someone called that a trifecta of mental health disaster, and it is.
Yeah.
But we also have a trifecta of a way to understand and move through and have health, right? And that's by incorporating body, mind, emotion in an interdependent way. These are not facets that are standalone. And anytime we try to handle anything we encounter with one of those standalone facets, body exercise, good, incomplete. Mind, talking yourself out of it or taking space or saying, no, I'm really blessed. No, I'm really blessed, which is true.
Yeah.
Right? But that's
Incomplete.
that's just a mental exercise that, again, is incomplete because it's only going to last so long. Emotion. We talk about talking about how you're feeling, right? Very important. However, if you're not doing it in a body that is in a rest and digest state with the part of your mind that can process what it is that you're talking about, then it's just left on the table as complaints, really, right? And not any resolution and understanding what needs to happen to move forward. And I don't mean resolution to move forward as a blanket statement. I mean within ourselves.
Yeah.
Because unless we're having a knowledge of how we're really experiencing something, then there's going to be a million little reminders, pokes. Hey, right?
Something's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's I want to go deeper into that. Maybe we will in future episodes.
We can go to subsequent.
Because I think like this reactive, proactive thing, and like finding a real. I just wrote down rest because it is rest and digest is like where we want to be. And
as opposed to fight and flight. People are much more familiar with that term now because of the pandemic than they ever were before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like I've always said this even about Kittanning. Like the first video I ever did, I talked about what do low housing prices mean in Kittanning? Well, it means that the housing economy is not great, but it also means that there's an amazing, incredible opportunity.
Right.
Like inside of every disaster, inside of every big problem, there is a massive opportunity. And so we have right now maybe the greatest opportunity of all time.
Correct.
If we can slow down
and
figure it out.
And talk about why we were so susceptible to begin with.
Oh, yeah.
All right, those comorbidities that increased susceptibility are the very things that come about from our bodies being out of rest and digest. They're all functions of inflammation in the body. Inflammation in the body happens when we're in prolonged states of fight or flight. So we were already there, right? And so this is a great opportunity to say, wait a minute, why was our functioning at a level where antidepressants were at an all-time high, where overdoses were at an all-time high, why we kept looking, searching for things outside of ourselves to dump into ourselves to try to feel better.
Yeah.
And I think this is an important point too.
Go for it.
It's not just lifestyle habits and dumping things into us. Those chronic diseases happen even without those behaviors. So that really tells us something, because it's easy to say, oh yeah, well, they did this, that, and the other thing to their bodies. It happens first, and they're trying to relieve what has happened to their body because it is out of rest and digest.
Right. Yeah.
Different.
So let's just do the quick 3 things of the body, mind, emotion.
Okay.
I think if we just hit on each one of those, we can give people a place to start.
Okay.
And then I just want to invite all of you guys, if you have any questions about anything that we're talking about, or like insights, feel free to put them in the comments. And then one thing we always talked about with Mental Health Mondays, if you have like a specific situation in your life that's happening, I think it would be really cool if we could kind of create episodes. We'll keep your anonymous if you want to be. You can message me on Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, or you can send an email to gcitw@yahoo.com, and I'll be more than happy to we can use that and kind of talk through what that looks like.
That's when it really comes alive.
Yeah.
Because when we have a reference point of understanding to fit what we're about to describe, in real time, in real life, there's so many aha moments. It's like, oh, that's why. And it's really uplifting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has been for me, so I can speak to that. So someone's in this state. Well, the whole nation's in this state. What should we do? We know we start with body when we have these conversations. What does it mean to like bring your body in line with the way it's designed to be?
The way so there are 2 indicators in our physiology that can be seen when there's not mental imaging, I'm sorry, I'm on to the next thing already. When there is imaging, scans of our physical bodies. And what we see when we are in a fight or flight stage is that oxygen is concentrated at the top of our respiratory system, because it's being hoarded, if you will, for a power strike to either fight the thing that's coming at us, which is why part of it, the response is called fight, or flight, to run away from the thing that is coming at us, from the thing that is endangering our well-being. The other one is that our field of vision narrows. When our field of vision narrows, again, it's for the same reason. It's we want to be able to not be distracted by anything other than the threat that is coming at us, so we can fight it, or so we can find the quickest means of egress, right, without any other distractions coming in. So God in his great wisdom, and whether you believe it's God or not, this works, right? You water the plant, you give it sun, it grows, whether you believe it's God or not. And I work with both sets of people, by the way, and the outcomes have been similar, not complete, but similar. All right. So when we look at the body in the way that we can exert influence over those 2 automatic components of fight or flight, it's that we can put our breathing into our diaphragm, bring it down to the lower regions of our lungs, and it's probably not a surprise for anybody to be hearing that, because just as fight or flight has gained a lot of traction even before then, breathing exercises have been encouraged to relax. But again, it's incomplete because that's solely the body component. What that does when we bring our breath down into the diaphragm to distribute into our bodies the oxygen that it needs, then our major muscle groups and organ groups function the way they were designed to function. We stay in a state of health. So the component that really turbocharges that state of health, though, and kind of kicks in that we are safe, is the widening of the vision. Yeah. And that means bringing the peripheral vision online.
I had a little revelation about that recently, because I was reading about the Sabbath, and it's like the Jewish practice of taking Saturday and just doing essentially nothing. But they don't do nothing. I always thought that it was just sitting around. Right. But the Sabbath was always it was a time where they would intensely focus on their relationship with God. And I was talking to someone about it, and he said, yeah, a Jewish person that is practicing a proper Sabbath, they might read 20 or 30 Psalms throughout the day and do a lot of real reflection on who God is and what his creation is and all those kinds of things. And I thought, man, like what do I do if I'm stressed and want to unwind or relax? I do like one of two things generally. This is historically. And I don't do these a ton, but like this is what I would do. I'll either play a game, like a video game, or play chess or something like that, or I'll watch TV.
Okay.
And so what does TV and video games generally do? It lasers us in on something, so we're intensely focused on it. We don't normally play like games that will like are calm.
Right.
We play games that are anxiety inducing, and we normally don't watch TV shows that are calm. We watch things that are anxiety inducing, whether it be Steelers football or whether it be
that is anxiety inducing,
or whether it be an action movie or even a drama where it's like it's not like action like fight or flight, but it's like internal like anxiety.
Right.
That's the thing that we love to watch. And and we're trying to rest.
Right.
To do those things. It's doing this opposite.
It's a vicarious release of.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work. But you think it does because it's confirming that adrenaline need and that adrenaline rush. And so it is a vicarious release.
Yeah. And I'm like, how much better off would we be if we took our rest and actually did it the way that it's designed to be?
Right.
Like when I read the Psalms, I'm left in awe just about every time. And I might read a few verses and then just be like, wow.
Right.
And there's no greater time to like widen vision. And the breathing automatically goes where it's supposed to go.
Right.
And so why is Sabbath good? Well, that's why it's good.
That's why it's good. It's rest.
How cool.
Right? Rest and digest.
So that was like a revelation to me recently. I've been Sabbathing all wrong.
Okay. Right. Well, all of us, for the most part, Sabbath all wrong.
Yeah.
Because we think it's an indulgence of, right? Yeah. Rather than an entering to.
So you'd be much better off. Take a like calm walk through town where you're like looking around at things. Observe your natural surroundings. Go do something that's going to be active but not overactive.
Right.
And go ahead.
But you got to do it with the recognition that in putting our bodies into rest and digest, the prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, is coming online.
Yeah.
Because, again, incomplete. If we're only doing body relaxation, that works for a time, but then as soon as you're out of that activity or as soon as you're called back into whatever it is that is stressing you to begin with, you're right back there. You might have given yourself a brief reprieve, right? A little pause, little vacay, but it doesn't help to stay within those confines of the stress in a way that doesn't stress you out all over again. And that's what we're after.
I thought you were going a different direction and saying, and this could be true too, so correct me if I'm wrong. You go on the walk and it actually opens up your mind a little bit, and then you start to think about all the things that are there, and you actually start to hate walks because it turns your brain on.
That's there too. That's there too. Although, and that's why people can't be alone.
Yeah.
All right. That's why this pandemic in isolation had all of these things coming to the surface because they had too much time to be alone. All right.
Yeah.
And so the walking component, and it's complicated in the sense that exercise, we need exercise, right? So it releases things, but in that release, then the other things come back in. So yes and yes and yes, right?
I'm thinking of someone who like has their TV on while they're just doing stuff around the house, even though they're not watching it, because they just can't stand for it to be quiet even while they're doing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because then they start to surface, right? And so when we're talking about the prefrontal cortex and the thinking brain being online, that is the one that can process and prioritize and determine what it is that's important at any given time. Important to you, right? Not important to Joe Schmo or what Sally told you should or shouldn't be doing.
Right.
Important to you. But with that is energy in motion, emotion. Emotere, from the Latin root, emotere, literally energy in motion. It's a contraction, like Jennifer Lopez, J-Lo. I may be dating myself, but I'm sure there's many other contractions out there, right, that we know things by. All right? Fear of missing out, FOMO, right?
Yeah.
It's energy in motion,
right.
Emotion. All right? And so when we're picking up physiologically that same energy and motion that's present when we're getting all rattled and all stressed out, then it throws us right back into that state of fight or flight. And that's why it's so important to have the interdependence, the trifecta of power, love, and self-control.
Yeah, so we're now merging it in, so we get the body right, then the mind can come online. We can now function from like a place where we can have executive functioning. We can make decisions rather than just being tossed around.
Right, we have the ability to respond to what's happening,
Yeah,
rather than react.
and so that's when we tie in the emotion, right? So if we're always in a state of anxiety, or for the last couple of years, if you've been on edge all the time,
Right.
that's why, right?
Right. Yes.
It's because we're basically allowing the emotion of the situation to keep us in fight or flight. And I think, is hypervigilance, is that a medical term?
I don't know that it's a medical term. It's a psychological term.
Yeah, so we get into that kind of hypervigilance where you're like, we're never leaving that state of being in fight or flight.
Right.
And that's a recipe for disaster on an individual level and on a national, societal level.
Very much so. Because just as soon as we think we see a light at the end of the tunnel, if you will, something else comes in. Omicron, right?
There's always going to be something else.
And there's always going to be something else. But as you were stating earlier, this is a great opportunity for us to really understand, learn, and know what it means to be healthy, to be body, mind, emotion healthy, because coronavirus would not have hit the way it did had those comorbidities not been present.
Sure.
Because we have a huge rate of comorbidities in this country and worldwide. That's becoming more and more so. But in this country, where we got hit very early and very hard, right?
Yeah.
Those comorbidities are high.
And it's not just on the physical side either, because if you look at deaths of despair, as far as suicides, overdoses, all those kinds of things,
all the deaths of despair,
they are all skyrocketed as well. And those are really, they're mental health comorbidities in response to the lockdown and all those kinds of things. So it's a very interesting conversation. And so I guess, what do we leave someone with today? Go take a walk?
That's why I went into the specifics of the exercises.
Yeah.
Because that's where we need to begin. We always need to begin there, just like calisthenics, because what we're doing is we're bringing the term is parasympathetic autonomic nervous system, okay? It's part of our automatic functioning. But that's why I was talking about the things that we can exert influence over, because the sympathetic autonomic nervous system functioning that is reactive and under the state of fear, the fight or flight, is the place where we need to be bringing ourselves away from, that we can indeed exert influence over physiologically at the beginning, which is then how we get the other things. Because if our bodies are not in rest and digest, then that thinking brain is not online. And then energy and motion, the fear, becomes threat in and of itself, and then pulls us right back to fight or flight. And we can't ever process through, that was the other definitive word that you said, what I'm going through, to know what we're going through. We can't identify it until we can get through it. And we can't do that unless we're in a parasympathetic rest and digest state.
Yeah. So I guess my challenge to you would be do what I did involuntarily. If you can do it voluntarily, you'll be in a better place than me, and we won't have to make a podcast about what's wrong with you. But
although call in or write, see, I'm dating myself again. It's not a call in. Do whatever it is that you do.
Yeah, messages. But take some time, whether you think that the pandemic has affected you or not. Take some time and really consider how it has affected you. Get yourself into that calm place. Truly, when I say go for a walk, I don't mean that in jest. Like, that's a great way to do it.
It is.
And the other, like, if you get out a Bible and read through the Psalms, just like they had talked about, as it would be an amazing place to like get your mind into a place of rest to be able to think.
Right, and then that does bring your body on line. Okay, so the interdependence, I speak about the body being the start point because it's the point that we all override, right? That when we're talking about what needs to be happening, But we also need to be careful of something that I realized that I had engaged in, not during this time, but early on in my walk with spirituality, and that was spiritual bypassing. That instead of really checking in with myself under what God was telling me and under what I had been through and what needed to be corrected, I just leapfrogged over myself and said, well, God's going to take care of it. Oh, well, God works all things out together for good. When those are all really, really true. But he gives us his word and his light for each and every one of us to understand and know him. He wants relationship with us, and that means that we're entering into the Psalms with him and really seeing what that means for us, with us under his hand, rather than just reading it as a separate kind of thing to hang on to, because then we spiritually bypass, and that doesn't move us to where he wants to take us either.
Yeah, and I think for myself, now that I've kind of walked through this a little bit with myself, I was kind of just assuming before that I was okay, and in turn then assuming that everyone else is like kind of having their own journey. Now I'm walking around basically assuming that everyone else is not okay, and which is actually great. Yeah, because it creates in me a different kind of empathy, and I'm no longer thinking, oh my gosh, what's this person's reaction going to be to what I do? Now I'm thinking, if this person's not okay, how can I best act in order to help them to be okay? So
do you ask the questions when you say, oh, this person has a mask on, and you're wondering whether or not they think you should have a mask on, or they don't want to come into your office?
Sometimes I do ask them a question. Most of the time Most of the time people are like, oh, I thought I had to have a mask on here. And I'm like, no, you're good, dude. Okay. And then they're like, so yeah, that's where we're at. But that's Armstrong County.
Okay. Well, that's another very important consideration in all of this. 99.9% of the time, people are acting from things that they truly believe. So when we look at how to handle these things, we're not looking at you're right, you're wrong, you're good, you're bad, right? It needs to be a opening of how can we cross this bridge, or how can we bridge whatever may be happening here, so that we all feel like we can move forward and past. Because if that's not happening, then this continues. No matter what the subject is, right? Yeah. No matter what the next thing coming is.
And I don't want to be operating out of fear and anxiety. Yeah. That's never what any of this has been about. I want to operate out of a place of love and progress. Right. Like, I want to be moving forward with everyone to a better future. Right. And so I think that's what's been hard about making videos for me. That's what's been hard about this whole process is like, I wasn't in that place. But now I'm getting back to that place.
And you didn't even know it.
I didn't even know it. Yeah. I just thought I was tired and burnt out, which I probably was. Yeah. But that probably actually contributed to my tiredness and burnoutness.
Right. Well, and because if we're not processing that stuff, like you were saying earlier, it was always in the back of your mind. Yeah. That's, we don't have these sayings for no reason. These are literal. We carry things, right? We have a burden. We feel heavy, right? That language indicates to us that it truly is something that impacts us physiologically.
Right. Good stuff.
Good stuff.
I really enjoyed this. I hope you did as well.
Me too.
We've reminded you twice now. Put your comments down there. Let us know what you thought. If there's anything we could change or adjust or address or clarify, we would love to hear it.
Yes.
You good?
Yeah. Thank you.
Be blessed. Thanks for watching. See you next time.